All right, the ADA, Americans with Disability Act. Okay, so one of the things, the ADA basically is a collection of laws that are just meant to help to protect the civil liberties, the civil rights of people with disabilities, right? And it's not web specific. It's basically it's all things. Think having handicap parking spots or having braille on signs or sometimes you have those you have to have ramps in order to get into a building, things like that, right? Because people with disabilities have to be able to do the same things that we all do. So it's basically making things handicap accessible to a large extent for people with different abilities. Now, the ADA is not, like I said, web specific, but it does sort of trickle down into what we do as well. Okay, so you can learn more about the ADA here, but what we have to worry about more is this WCAG. Okay, so when we make our websites, we have to comply to certain standards in order for us to, in order to be able to follow it. Okay, so this is important, like if you're going to be a web designer in the future, because you could potentially get sued. Like if you make a website and for some reason someone can't access some of the features or they're not able to navigate it in some way, you would be not compliant, and then that would happen. Okay, but more importantly, it's the right thing to do, right? I mean, they should have access to the same things that we have access to. So you should do it because from a moral standpoint, it's the right thing to do. But also, it's good for business, right? If you make content and there's a significant portion of people who can't access that content, they're not going to be they're not going to see your information. They're not going to be able to give you money, right? So it behooves you as a business itself, regardless of the ADA and WCAG, to comply with these standards. Okay. So that being said, if you click on this, you'll go to the WCAG standards here. Okay. So basically, this is this is actually quite new. And there's a lot of information here. It's a lot of information, so I'm not going to go through it. And if you are more interested in it, you could. And in the future, like I said, if you end up being a professional web designer or something you're going to go into, I would definitely take the time to look through it. Maybe even take a course on it. I'm sure they'll have some sort of like information thing that they'll put out there. But these are things that we have to take into account. So some of it we've already been sort of doing. When you create images, for instance, right? We're always supposed to put the alt tag in there because that way when a screen reader reads it, and let's say someone's visually impaired, when a screen reader reads it, it will read the alt tag since they can't see the image. And that way it'll say, like dog with pink bow. And then they'll know what the picture is and they'll understand. And so you would need to put that alt tag in anything that might be visually difficult to see. Okay. There's other things too where, for instance, you have to have high contrast, meaning like black and white is fine. But like this, I think this is high enough contrast, but I don't know if they would be okay with this. So there are certain things, there's a percentage that you need to follow. But it can be kind of difficult to do that. You also have to make it so like that the text can be scaled up and scaled down. You have to be able to make the background and the foreground swap colors. If you have a video, it has to be also accompanied by like written out explanation. There's a lot of things that you have to have captions. So there's a lot of things that go into it, and it's quite a bit. What I will say with this is that definitely do your best to follow these guidelines. But do be aware, I think if you went to 99% of websites, they are not this. This website itself is not this. And this is the one that's telling you the standards. So we'll do the best that we can, obviously, do your due diligence. But I know personally, these standards are going to be difficult for me to follow. In fact, actually, I think I'm probably going to take my website down because I don't think I can follow what these are. Like so for example, every link that goes from things has to be ADA compliant. So I can't link to certain things because they won't be ADA. So, or WCAG compliant. So, we'll see what happens with this because it's a very difficult thing to kind of follow. But we should always do our best, like I said. So make sure that you are implementing as much as you can. And like I said, if you do decide to go into web design, just make sure that you are aware of this. This is a big one that's coming down the line, that you are trying to follow this. Okay. Next.